Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session, Scaling Value with Azure Databricks. My name is Luke Pritchard. I lead our global data practice here at Avanade.
And I'm Susie Lara Gonzalez, and I am part of the Data and AI COE with Avanade and focus a lot on solutioning architecture. So before we get started, I want to make sure that at the end of this, you don't forget to rate and review the sessions. It's really important for the overall summit. So please don't forget to do that. So let's jump into it. So today we will be covering a full agenda ranging from who is Avanade and how do we help clients, go through some of the market context, our approach, questions for our clients, go through a couple of client examples, and then finish off on where to get started. So who is Avanade and how do we help clients? So Avanade was founded in 2000 by Microsoft and Accenture. And essentially, we bring the best of Microsoft experts to our client solutions. So we also recently launched an official partnership with Databricks in April 2020 to activate our global resources. We have over 80 locations across 24 countries, and this partnership is helping us scale and bring data science and AI to our clients. So that is a little bit of what we do as a firm. So Avanade, all up, helps our clients accelerate the value of data end to end. So this includes anything from a high-level strategy to incorporating and enabling AI and data science at scale, which Spark is a core pillar as it relates to an end-to-end data platform. And so we have clients all over the world, and we're helping them realize new revenue streams, new business models, enhance customer experiences, reduce risk, a wide range of clients in a wide variety of industries, ranging from healthcare to retail to manufacturing. So anything data related, from strategy to scale, we help our clients in that realm. So with that, I'll hand it over to our global lead here, who's pioneers this for Avanade, Luke.
Thanks, Susie. Before we get started in some of the cool things that we're doing with clients, I'm going to provide some market context and tie back to our approach here. It's a really exciting time working in the market. Data is really the fuel of the new economy. It's driving everything. Even in today's current environment, data is very core to everything that's going on in terms of how we look at the world and how we make decisions and how we influence for different systems and applications and processes. Some of the key areas that we've seen is from our customers is market differentiation. That data is core to that. It also comes into their new business models, new products and services, and then driving better experiences and processes throughout the org. And using data also, at the end of the day, does reduce risk and improve compliance. Not as exciting as creating a new business, but data is really core to that, and it's growing. And this is recognized by all the different market research firms and organizations worldwide. And how does Databricks fit into this, and what are our clients trying to achieve? We see Databricks as core to these journeys, core to what our clients are doing with data. Very, very often, it is being used as a key pillar in Azure specifically for scaling data science and AI. Through doing that, new business models are emerging, competitive differentiations emerging, and there's a freeing of data from legacy systems that is also being applied to this to even make it richer as organizations go on this journey. So our approach here at Avanade is pretty simple. We have something we call use case-based solutioning. This is an area where we ensure the technical solutions that we design and recommend to our clients aligns to their business strategy, but also fits within their key processes, ties back to the business outcomes that they're looking to do on a project, and then also considering the end user and developer experiences in the ecosystem. When using Databricks, this is a key construct. Often we see too often that organizations or architects, they'll focus too much on one particular software, one particular package, or one particular service from a vendor without looking at it from an end-to-end perspective. And this really helps us gravitate to make that right selection. It's very business value focused. So it's not just about IT and what they're trying to achieve, but also business users and the top line business goals. How does that align? It's also a proven approach. We've done this lots and lots and lots of times. We've forecasted out costs. We've come up with technical selection roadmaps to make it flexible. But really, at the end of the day, the reason we do this is we want to drive a technical selection and recommendation in Azure that fits the needs of the business and the developers and the IT organizations. And as you work on your own projects, this is very much a process that you could take to heart yourselves as well, and it'll do you well in building advocates in your organization. So what is the approach, or solutioning approach in detail? I think number one is really the strategic alignment. You know, is this tied to a cloud transformation, a business transformation, digital transformation, or is there a key initiative going on organizationally? You know, maybe there's a business disruption around that. But you know, what is this project tying into? What's the value around that? What's the success criteria from all the different groups? You know, a lot of you come from organizations that are heavily matrix, they're complex. But how do you get the viewpoints to say, once you've gone and used this technology, you've done a project, and you're running something, how do you go to those people using the system to say, hey, this was successful? And there's different points of view, and I think it's important to capture those points of view early before you get started, and also take it into your design as well from that perspective. And this ties directly into the business process and the user experience. So understanding the business processes, your organization, where does this fit? But then as you know, you look at the experiences, whether it's a developer, a data scientist, a data engineer, or just a business user or a customer that's using a website, how do you ensure that technical selection is aiding the desired experience? And this is a key construct that we work within to come up with the right technical selection. And from there, we go through a functional architecture and then a deep dive technical data flow that ticks and ties to all the efforts below. And we typically advocate, let's do an MVP, prove the value, and then industrialize the business value, and then have a roadmap to continue growing around that. And we have a number of tools that we've done as we've done this a number of times with our clients. But this is an approach that you should consider going as you work through the Azure Data Services and integrating Databricks as a broader part of your data platform. So what do we mean by IT and business success criteria? I've heard a number of different things for success criteria. We've actually broken it out into two different pieces. And the main reason is there's technical success criteria that we often hear is, you know, we had one client said we have to support 30,000 columns. That's success. If it does that, then the project's good. However, the business on their side of things, they actually looked at it and said, I need to be able to do many more clinical trials in a week than I am today. I need to do 400% more clinical trials. So they were divergent in terms of the success, and this is why we capture it. But when we're thinking business success criteria, what we have on the screen, these are very similar to what you know, the businesses we're talking to on what they want to be able to do, whether it's reducing risk, or it's reducing costs, or it's improving satisfaction, improving efficiencies, or maybe it's generating new revenue from that perspective. These are the top line business outcomes that you should be looking for as you go through your journey and working through building out your data platform and the use cases that the data platform will support. Okay. And also, taking, we have a lot of experience. So, we receive a lot of questions from our clients on a regular basis from that perspective. And, there are four broad categories that we do receive a lot of, they're common. Cloud services, technical refresh, data science and data engineering. And then the other thing too is we get a lot of questions around Spark, just in general, or Hadoop or Databricks or open source. And I think from this perspective, this is where really Databricks has a great story around these questions. These questions often come up in a data transformation or a business transformation journey or a very large program. It may not seem clear cut, but a lot of these programs are really focused on data. They're focused on data science, AI, and these are new concepts. And I think as we work through with our clients, we recognize these questions, but how can we make these journeys easier as time goes on? And what we found is many of our solutions, Databricks is a good fit to not only help scale data science and data engineering in the org, but it's also to simplify the open source piece around Hadoop. Given that it's in Azure, there's a great integration from that with development teams, security, automation from that perspective. And then also, the user experience in Databricks and the ease of using Spark really helps out in being able to help from a consumption-based format perspective. With that, I'll go through a couple of client examples here. I think these are always the most interesting things to talk about. Is what are our clients doing and what are we helping them with from the perspective? And I think everybody's doing something a little bit different, but every single one, there's lessons to be learned, both good and bad, and I'll share some of those with you. The first client I'm going to talk about is a global pharmaceutical company that really specializes in creating vaccines and medicines through clinical trials. They have a lot of data. There's a lot of standard healthcare data. They're generating a lot of field data. They're taking lots of metrics, and they're a very data-driven company from that perspective. They also live in an era where they're for-profit. They rely on patents. They're relying on innovations, research to come up with that next cure, to keep their business running, so they can continue, innovating from this. And patents only have a certain amount of shelf life, so there's a big urgency to make sure that these things are going. And with COVID coming out, and the race for a vaccine, this really fits. That illustration really fits well as a company they try to do every day, and they've done for years and years and years. And really, we worked with them around this. They had a pretty large legacy data estate, and the way they were working was essentially getting extracts out of that data ecosystem on-prem from a couple different sources. It took days and days and days to get the data, and then they would model it in some ad hoc software. Then they would repeat that process again, especially if they had some new data pivot that they wanted to go with. From that perspective, it was cumbersome. They saw it as there's all this new technology coming out. How can we leverage that? And then also they were finding some limitations in their current software setup around what they could do. And they were really looking for, how can we get into the cloud? How can we benefit? And how can we actually get to this top line goal? From the IT perspective, they were really looking for, how do we move to the cloud? How do we get to the cloud from that perspective? And there was some misalignment around that. But as we went through the use case based solution approach, it became pretty clear there was a clear use case where the business, or the clinical research group, they had a pretty fair use case from that perspective. From moving data to the cloud, this was a good win for the IT because they had a use case that could move to the cloud. The business would say, yes, this was a good thing. As part of that, though, there's a technology gap. So how, this organization wasn't familiar with Azure Databricks. They somewhat knew what Hadoop was. That was about, they knew a little bit about Spark. But we introduced Azure Databricks, and it solved a couple different issues for us. Number one, it was notebook-based, which most of the researchers and scientists, they were used to. So they were happy with that from a user experience perspective. But more importantly, it integrated securely with their other Azure data services in the cloud at a scale, and they could scale up and down. They could support the loads. It gave them that modern compute where they could do these clinical trial research even faster. This is something that we've been on a journey with them, and we got them up and running from that perspective. And they are doing more and more clinical research trials, and hopefully they're finding something to help with COVID here from that perspective. Another one, I'm switching industries on everyone here, is a financial services company that's they have a number of customers that use them for banking, loans, and credit cards, and a full range of financial services. A lot of their customers, though, they're just using one service. So they may be a banking customer, but they're not using the credit cards that are offered, or they may be using some of a savings account, but they're not using, maybe the checking accounts. But there's a number of different combinations and financial service products this firm has. One of the key things that was coming out of it that was more of a data problem, but it was also looking through some of the logs, was that an issue of credit card application process being abandoned. So, a number of clients would go in, look at a credit card, but they would just leave. Part of it was, it was pretty tactical in that there were some challenges with the website. But what was even more so the challenge was what was being recommended as the credit card product to the person, to the applicant. And this turned into being a data issue for the most part, an algorithm issue. And so to improve insights into the customers, the data scientists started using Databricks to start spinning through all the different data, coming up with their different modeling. But that, that was one piece of it. The second piece of it is, how can we actually scale this into our website so we can continue improving the model based on what happens. And so as a result, after modernizing the website, but then also modernizing the algorithms for the next best offer, they've been able to increase the revenue greatly just by fixing this problem on their website, and also making better recommendations to their customers to apply. And then they've seen a massive increase from that perspective. But the key thing with Databricks is it seamlessly worked with Azure ML. It seamlessly worked with the security in Azure and the banking security around that perspective. And it really, really helped from that. And it not only for the data science work, but then operationalizing and scaling the data science. Okay. Another one that I'm going to go through is an insurance company. They're based in the UK. A little different challenge that they have. Insurance companies, they provide lots and lots of quotes. They have lots of different policies. They have different things going through, lots and lots of data. I think when we first started working with the company, they said we're a data company, but we really don't have a lot of data. I think that was misrepresented as we talked through. The fact was they were generating lots of new data every single day at a rate that they didn't even have insights into from that perspective. And they had some robust data science. They had a lot of models going through, so they're pretty advanced on the data science side of things. The challenge that they really had was reporting on the results, producing out, what's the price optimizations, and making that more visible throughout at a scale. And really, where Databricks came into is it fit within the data science community of the client very well, but it also fit into the data ecosystem they have to help scale out those algorithms and make it more aware to process this data and coming up with the different pieces. And it was really core to data engineering and scaling up data science. Without Databricks, this would have been a very challenging and difficult problem to have. I think the other thing with Databricks is given it's in Azure, it worked within all their security perspectives and policies from that. And this turned into being a pretty impactful service that the client put together for their business users to help improve the efficiencies of their business and be more competitive in the market.
Great. So we heard a lot of great client stories and what we're seeing in the market from Luke. And now I want to talk through how we get started. So what we offer is an Azure Data Studio for our clients who are looking to transform their business and digital transformation. And we have 3 key pillars for the studio: virtual, portable, and physical. As many of you are aware, the reason we're having this conference virtually is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So our physical and portable models are probably up to the state of our health crisis. But before all this, we did have a studio in Toronto, Canada, and there's more coming globally. And then we have the portable one that can be used at any of our digital studios. But what I want to highlight here today in our virtual world is the virtual Azure Data Studio, which helps where we bring in our clients and they come in to a virtual session and we talk through that end-to-end data transformation for them on Azure. And regardless of where they're at, whether they are very preliminary and they don't know any of the features within Azure to I have a POC, I want to scale across the business. We can help them at any part of that journey. And then also in that day in the virtual studio, we can have them talk to Avanade SMEs, client-specific industries, SMEs as well, to really help them align their business and technical ambitions. As Luke alluded to earlier, that highlights our approach to use case-based solutioning. So we really want to make sure that this day in the studio gives them immediate value and a way to get started. So as part of our data studio, virtual data studio, we have 4 key workshops that help our clients in their journey. So it goes from data on Azure ideation. So a client comes in and they can come in and learn about the benefits of Azure or their data, or really understand ideas for where they can go. And then a natural next step is to go on to co-creating your data vision and strategies by creating a roadmap of what that looks like specific for that client. And then the next workshop that we offer is designing your use case. So really coming in and understanding, okay, we have clients say, we want to do 100 things and they're all super important. So we help them prioritize the highest value use case and prioritize that, create detailed design documents so we can quickly prove value for the business. And then finally, for our more mature clients that are already underway and they have a POC and they're just really looking to scale across the business, we help them leverage that by creating an enterprise scale operating model. So you can see here, these are the 4 workshops that we offer as part of our virtual Azure Data Studio to ultimately improve efficiency and productivity for our clients. So, and this is again tailored back towards this this key new partnership that Databricks and Avanade recently launched. So excited to see some folks in the studio, virtual, portable, or the real one in Toronto. So with that, I'll open the floor to Q&A.